Hi, my name is VR Colletti. I'm a New York City native. Um, I don't even know where to begin because it feels so redundant. It feels insane that we're still having this conversation over and over and over and nothing happens. I think it's completely crazy that people even allude to the Second Amendment of the Constitution, which was written over 200 years ago, when things like AR-15s did not exist, when we lived in a completely smaller sized country, uh, in a completely different world, literally, that I think if there is a one key genius aspect of the Constitution, it's that the founding fathers, and let's be very clear, they were definitely fathers. They were white men, most of whom owned enslaved people. Uh, they left room in the Constitution for us, the future generations, to change it. I mean, it just seems so clear to me. It just seems so obvious to me. I just don't even understand why I need to be sitting here on a Saturday night saying whatever words are able to come out of my mouth at this point in time. However, there's no other option for me but to sit here on my Saturday night in front of my screen to say the words that come out of my mouth. How is it remotely okay to constantly and continually watch little children be murdered, their faces blown off again and again and again, and not do anything about it? And especially when way more than half of this country, close to 80 to 90% of the people in this country want to see things change. How does nothing change? How do the people who are supposedly elected to represent the people constantly do nothing? And we have to be very clear. It is mostly Republicans, right, in Congress. And I'm not here to argue politics. I'm here to talk about how we as a nation do not have to see 5-year-olds have their faces blown off by machine guns while they're in their school to learn, to socialize, to live their young lives with the promise of a future that gets taken away from them, and and nothing changes. And it I mean, I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind. I think we all are. We need to do something about this. And the people in Congress have the ability to do something about it, and they just refuse. They just refuse. Even the, you know, current, set of negotiations happening between Chris Murphy and John Cornyn, and, I mean, that needs to get done. We'll see if it does get done, but if it does get done, that is the tipping point. That's the bare minimum of what needs to happen. This is the only country in the whole world that has this problem. It is a problem. It is beyond a problem, and what is so perhaps even more infuriating and enraging and depressing is that it does not have to be a problem. There are semi-simplistic solutions to address this problem. It's not going to completely get rid of it. We know that, but we can do something to improve it. I mean, it's just facts. There have been more mass shootings in this country than there are days in this calendar year. How does that make sense to anybody, particularly to the members of Congress who sit on their asses taking money from the NRA and allow these children to get their faces blown off by an AR-15. And I wish that, like, what I was saying was so far from reality. I wish what I was saying was so out of conception of this being reality. It's the reality that we live with every day. We just don't know when we're going to get shot, whether we're going to church, whether we're going to our grocery store, our supermarket, whether we're going to the movies, whether we're going to see a concert, whether we're just out walking on the street. I mean, who wants to live this way? It is a choice. We have a choice. And we need to exercise our choices in a responsible way that does not get involved in partisan politics. Like, who doesn't want to be able to walk down the street and not fear being shot? Who doesn't want to send children to school and not worry about them being shot? It just seems to me like this is a universal. It seems to me that every other country in the world has come to this conclusion. Every country in the world except for one, the United States of America, which allows itself to be governed by an antiquated constitution, which, when it was written, there were no machine guns, there were no weapons of mass destruction to this extent. We need to wake up, because it's not that hard. It's just not that hard. Universal background checks. Banning assault rifle weapons. When we have done this in the past, we have seen that it works. And then when George W. Bush decided not to renew that in 2005, it's just data. We saw this spike of mass shootings increase from that point. It's just data. We know what can work. And, you know, when you're talking about protecting people's freedoms, don't we also in the Constitution have the freedom to the right to live, to the pursuit of happiness? Right? What about defending those freedoms? I come to you, you know, perhaps with a different background, a different philosophy. I'm a yogi in the modern world. I study and I have the privilege of sharing the philosophy of yoga with people. And the yoga philosophy is a system that is thousands of years old, and it comes from the East, it comes from India, but it applies very much to our lives today all over the world. And I think there's a part of it that I want to share with you that applies to what we're talking about right now in terms of gun control. Right? Just a really quick synopsis for those of you not familiar with yoga. Yoga is a philosophy. It's not just about putting your legs behind your head or touching your toes. It can be about that to some people, but it's a philosophy. And there's a text written called the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, and that text, like the Constitution, has 4 chapters. In Sanskrit, they're called padas. And there's this one sutra. First of all, the word sutra means thread. And when you take all these threads and you put them together, you create a tapestry or a philosophy. And that is the philosophy of yoga. That's the philosophy that I'm talking about. And I'm just about to talk to you about one little thread, one tiny thread in this philosophy. And it's a sutra that comes in the 2nd chapter of the Yoga Sutra. And it says, Hayam dukam anagatam. That's the Sanskrit. Hayam dukam anagatam. And to translate that into English, what hayam dukam anagatam means is that pain that we have not yet faced in our lives is avoidable. Pain that has not yet happened to us is avoidable. This is a philosophy that has existed for thousands of years. I remember the first time I heard that. To me, it was extremely profound, life-changing, and I have over the years thought a lot about that. How is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible for us to prevent future pain? I think it is. And I think if it is, it begins with awareness. And it begins with the choices that we make. And I think what we're talking about here is a very clear example of how Hayam Dukam Agatam applies to our lives today in a very real and pertinent way. Future mass shootings are preventable. Future mass shootings are avoidable. There are ways to prevent them. You know, until we get rid of all guns completely, all across the world, right? We're going to see people get shot. However, to the extent of which it happens, we do have some say over this. We do have some control over this. We do have choices that we can make to stop this to the extent that it's happening, where there is literally more than one mass shooting happening a day in the United States of America. We need to take action. It's not hard action. We know what we can do. Universal background checks, which about 90% of the country supports. Banning assault weapons. I mean, I could go down the list, and you've probably heard this. You're probably exhausted by it. I'm exhausted of having to say this again and again and again. But we have to say it, and you have to hear it. You have to listen to it until something actually changes. I thank you for listening. I said my piece, and thank you so much.